For anybody who is dealing with grief or trauma or betrayal or abandonment, the beautiful thing about getting to sit still with Jesus is that even if you feel like everyone else has abandoned you, and maybe you're like me, you've abandoned yourself a million times, this is a really great practice to remind you that you are not alone and that you are loved so deeply by Jesus. And he does have
Mm.
comfort for you and a
Yeah,
will for your life.
absolutely. Absolutely.
Hey, friends, welcome to the Holy Shift Show. I'm your host, Christine Crawford, and I'm so glad you're here. This podcast is for anyone willing to be curious, dig deep, and be surprised by God. We are well into season 3, the Draw Near, Dwell Well series, and it's all about overcoming overwhelm and learning to live healed and whole. And to do that, we're exploring some soul care and spiritual formation practices that help us connect deeply with God, ourselves, and others. And today, we have a fun bonus episode where we get to put some of what we've been learning about these practices into practice together. Because maybe you're like me and you love the sound of sitting still, but you're not really sure how to do that. Well, that's why I'm providing links to all of the resources that I have found helpful as I've been learning about this in the show notes and on the website. And today I am sharing one of my very favorite resources and favorite people, my very own personal therapist, Crystal Logan. Crystal is a licensed Christian counselor who runs a virtual private practice. She's been in the mental health field for over 17 years, and she's passionate about providing a safe place where women can learn the tools to be present with Jesus, process their emotions, identify and meet their needs, and connect to safety, love, and self-compassion. Now, I found Crystal a couple of years ago when a caring counselor and pastor recognized the depth of my hurt and referred me into her care. And ever since then, Crystal has been walking with me and helping me heal from some past trauma and the grief of my painful marriage and unwanted divorce. And I have to say, I have participated in counseling for years, and I have been blessed to sit in some very kind people's offices. But I have learned that healing from the hardest things often takes more than just talking about them. Talking about them is fine and it can be helpful, but so often grief and trauma go deeper than what we can consciously perceive or communicate. Trauma negatively affects our emotions and our relationships for sure, but it also negatively affects our bodies and brains. So Crystal and I have been doing some trauma therapies that are helping my brain shift out of survival mode because, as it turns out, being in a near constant state of fight or flight for a really long time will wreak havoc on everything. And when I was in the thick of it, I was so anxious and devastated that talk therapy just really couldn't have gone deep enough. As we approached my grief and trauma more holistically, I was able to receive from Crystal better. I was able to connect with my own needs and emotions. And best of all, I was better able to connect with and hear clearly from God. But I thought rather than just telling you how much this has helped me, I would invite Crystal on to do a short stillness exercise with us so that you could actually experience this for yourself. And then, if you stick around after my chat with Crystal, I will share a very raw, very real reflection I wrote after one of our sessions together. So if you can, get somewhere quiet and as distraction-free as possible. And let's just give our bodies and brains a chance to rest and our hearts an opportunity to connect with God. Well, Crystal, I am so excited. I get to talk to you about every week. And in fact, I get to talk to you right after we record this episode. But I wanted to do this before so that all of my makeup would be intact, because sometimes we don't make it through a session with my face still on. But I'm so excited to have you here today. And I'm so excited to share you with my community. So thank you so much for being here.
For me, feels like such an honor to be here.
Well, I would love for you to start. And I talk about this a little bit in the episode that I just recorded, and I talk about it a lot in the course. But I learned this from you. So I would like for you to talk a little more about the dashboard. Could you share with your own words what that looks like and how that can be helpful to us, please?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I actually learned this from my own counselor. And so the idea is really just that emotions aren't good or bad, that they're just information and actually a way that God gave us to help us figure out what's going on internally. And so the dashboard is, if you think about if you're driving and a light goes on the dashboard in your car, it's good information, right? You know, like, oh, I need to stop and pull over and figure out what's going on under the hood. And so really, I feel like emotions are similar. So if I have an emotion that's happening, it's like the light on the dashboard that's going off. So it's information for me to stop and slow down and be like, oh, hey, I wonder what's going on inside. And can give us a lot of good information. The more that we can kind of have that view, I think it takes a lot of the shame and fear about emotions away and really just helps us to see it as like, oh, this is just information about what's going on internally.
Mhm.
And so if I can pay attention to the lights on the dashboard and stop and be curious about what's going on, then I'm able to maybe process my emotions, figure out what's going on. There's always typically a need underneath an emotion. Like if I'm feeling sad, probably need some comfort,
Mhm.
for example. So often the more I'm able to be curious and lean into the emotions, then I can also figure out what's the need going on underneath and how can I get that need met. And so it's really just kind of a way to view emotions that can be really helpful.
Yeah, it is really helpful. We still kind of battle this with me, but you remember when I first came to you, I was so afraid of so many of my emotions and I was so ashamed of so many of my emotions. And what we found out is mostly because I was so afraid and so ashamed of my needs under those emotions. And, sometimes when we try to just deny or bury or shame ourselves out of feeling a certain way, we're not enabling ourselves to meet the need or find someone who can meet the need or go to God with that need. And then the issue usually just gets bigger and worse.
Right.
And so I'm so thankful in how you have helped me see emotions as information and be curious about that. And also acknowledge that it's okay for me to have needs. It's okay for me to
Right.
be human.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. God made us human, right? Like he likes humans. Actually, God created emotions because they're important information to help us know what's going on internally. And if we didn't have them, we would be clueless and just kind of drifting through life. So I think like emotions are a gift from God so that we can get our needs met, but also just be present with what's going on internally.
And our emotions are not, they're not too big for God, even if they feel big and scary.
For us, yeah.
Yeah. And they
Absolutely.
do.
They
So,
do. Yes, definitely. God's not afraid of our emotions.
yeah,
You know, he's not intimidated. He knows that we're human and he knows our emotions and they're not scary to him.
thank you. And another thing that you've really helped me understand is that we're whole beings. So when we're doing some counseling, we're not just dealing with our emotions. We are dealing with our bodies and our brains and grief and trauma especially kind of embed in our bodies and brains. They don't just, float around in our feelings all the time.
Mhm.
But we really are like whole beings. So our
Yeah.
bodies, our brains, our spirits, everything is integrated. And so you've been teaching me how to kind of care for my whole self instead of maybe just the symptom on the surface. Can you talk a little more about that integration?
Yeah, and I think I mean, God is 3 in 1, right? And we are made in God's image, right? And so it's the same with us as humans, that our body, spirits, and emotions are just really interconnected and aligned. And you can even, if you think about it with emotions, I mean, often if we're describing emotions, there's a body component of like, oh, I'm feeling anxious. We often describe that as like, oh, I feel like my heart's racing. I feel tightness in my chest or like a pit in my stomach. You know, like the connectedness between our bodies, our emotions, and our mind, like is really apparent. And I really think it's part of just the beautiful way that God gave us to be aware of what's going on internally. You know, so it's like, oh, if I'm not maybe aware of the emotion of anxiety, then I might be able to become aware of the body sensations that are accompanying that, right? Like the tightness, the heart fluttering, like I just described. Sometimes I might not catch that, so maybe I can be aware of the thoughts that are happening.
Mhm.
Because often with emotion, like anxiety, for example, you might have like racing thoughts, or I'm looping over and over, kind of bouncing all around.
Mhm.
So there's just our bodies and our minds, everything is just so interconnected. But I think it's part of the way God made us. Like we have multiple ways really just to be aware of what's happening internally.
Mhm.
And that also helps us to get our needs met. But also I think just in general, I think this metaphor we use a lot of like the wave, like emotions are like a wave, right? That are meant to move through us. But we often have that disconnect, right? Where bodies or emotions like are more disconnected. And so that's kind of like putting up a wall though, like that disconnect, dissociation, distraction, all the things we do to kind of avoid emotions or not
Yeah.
really look at them. It's kind of like putting up a wall. So you still have the emotion over here, but it can't get through. So it's just kind of building over here and increasing. And that often can cause physical health symptoms. It can cause depression, sometimes anxiety. I mean, there's a lot of ways that our emotions just really affect our bodies.
Yeah.
And so I think just coming back to the more we can be aware of that integration and kind of paying attention and really learn how to process emotions and help our body to ground and calm down. And that really affects just all parts of our body.
Well, what has been surprising, and it's still a challenge for me, but I can testify to how helpful it is when I cooperate. You have been teaching me how to get back in my body because I had a tendency, because the emotion was overwhelming, or I was afraid of the need underneath, because I knew, hey, this probably isn't a need that's going to be met safely. And of course, you've taught me how to just meet my own needs, and so that's been helpful too. But you help me figure out how to get back in my body and calm my body down and calm my nervous system down, because the other terrible thing about grief and trauma is that, like you said, it wreaks havoc on our bodies and our nervous system. So can you talk a little more about how caring for our bodies and our nervous system might help us connect with God?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's so important. I think a missing key for a lot of people. But I love some of the verses in the Bible, where it says, "Be still and know that I am God," right? The Bible is connecting the stillness to knowing God. Or in the Old Testament, in First Kings, where it talks about God came in the whisper, right? But not the wind, fire.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of verses in the Bible that just really connect that, slowing down, that stillness, that quiet, with being able to know God, being able to hear his voice. And so I think that's so key. But the problem is, like you talked about, trauma, even just the everyday stress of life, right? We just get really busy.
Yeah.
And that often we get kind of disconnected from ourselves and from our bodies and what's going on. And so I think the beautiful thing about learning how to ground, and grounding exercises is really just any way to help calm your body so that you can be present and grounded in what's happening. But the more you can do that, then the easier it becomes to connect in with the Lord, to hear his voice, but also to connect in with yourself and to be aware of what's happening in your body, what emotions you're feeling, what needs are coming up. And so it's kind of a multi-pronged.
It is, and I love it. And I believe you so much, not just because I love you and believe you, but because as we've been doing this work in me, I have been like, oh, this is real and this is true. And the entire series, this entire Draw Near, Dwell Well series is aimed at trying to help women slow down and sit still and connect with God and connect with themselves. I'm coming at it from a bunch of different angles, but I am just really 100% convinced that the Lord wants us to be with him, and the Lord wants us to be whole. And so what practices can we do to cooperate with him in that, to accept that invitation? That's what I'm trying to do. And so much the ways I've tried to express it here and the things that I've learned, they've come from you. So thank you so much for that. I appreciate that. Hey friends, so sorry to interrupt this amazing conversation, and I do hope you're enjoying it, but I just wanted to remind you of some fun new resources and opportunities that we have for you at The Holy Shift. You can find them under the new resources tab on the website. Now you'll notice several drop-down options there, including a Draw Near, Dwell Well page where you can access a free workbook that you can download for the series. I've put some scripture, quotes, and art in there that might be helpful, as well as some journal prompts and Holy Shift type questions to explore. It's a totally free resource, as well as a rather robust resource list that I've made where you can learn more about each of these topics and practices that we're going to be exploring here on the show. And then I have an entire Draw Near, Dwell Well online course available to you. This is a pre-recorded class that you can access instantly with a link and a password so that you can work through all this material in a slower, more convenient, and applicable way. I also get to get a lot more personal there, but I will tell you, it's a lot less like a course and more like a conversation. You're literally going to get me in my garden, on my porch, and in my studio, just sharing the raw and real of what I've been learning. I do have some snazzy slides an enhanced workbook, and some fun new bonuses in that course as well. And I'm now offering what I'm calling shift sessions, which are just opportunities for us to chat one-on-one and determine if, how, and when you can begin to make a holy shift in your own life. So if you want to go deeper in your faith, but you're not sure where or how to start, or if you need some help muddling through a question you have or a challenging truth you've learned, you'll receive personal encouragement and practical guidance, and I'll help you clarify any mistheologies and misunderstandings of God's heart and will for you. And then if you really want to go deep, consider doing some one-on-one spiritual mentoring with me. I'd be honored to walk with you in your spiritual journey and encourage you as you learn how to live healed and whole. And if you want to help others draw near and dwell well, would you consider contributing to the Holy Shift? It helps support this work and enables me to continue to encourage others through this ministry. I operate as a nonprofit in partnership with the Women's Nonprofit Alliance, so all donations are tax deductible, and you can do this under the Contribute tab on the website. Again, all of that is available at theholyshift.org or via the links in the show notes. Okay, now back to our conversation. And what I'd love to do now is, could you lead us kind of through maybe a stillness exercise or a quieting exercise or two, just to kind of help anybody who's watching or listening have a chance to experience this?
Yes, absolutely. Okay. If you are possible, we can have you just close your eyes. If you're driving, that's okay. You can keep your eyes open. Mm-hmm. So we're just going to focus on breath for a minute. And so I'll just have you put one hand on your stomach. And I want you to try to breathe more into your stomach and less into your chest. And so we'll just take a couple of breaths and just want you to imagine there's a balloon in your stomach that you're increasing as you inhale, and that you're deflating as you exhale. And so we'll just take a couple of deep breaths into our belly. And we'll have you continue breathing. And we're just going to do a little bit of something called progressive muscle relaxation, which just kind of helps you to calm your body, help your muscles relax. And so on your next inhale, we're going to have you squeeze your shoulders up towards your ears. Have a big inhale. Exhale. Let them down. And then your next inhale, we're going to have you squeeze your hands into a fist and your arms, your biceps all together. So big inhale. And then release and exhale. And then you're going to inhale and squeeze your butt and your thighs together. It's a big inhale. Big release. And then you're going to squeeze your calves, curl your toes under. So big inhale and squeeze. And big release. And then I just want you to shift and imagine for a minute in your mind a place that feels either safe or calm or peaceful, preferably somewhere outdoors, maybe the beach, the mountains, a meadow. And so I just want you to bring that place up in your mind. Just keep breathing deep. I just really want you to imagine just kind of you could be in that place right now. You don't need to be anywhere else right at this moment. You don't need to do anything else right at this moment. No one needs you. That you can just be present in this beautiful, calm place. And just lean into all your senses. And I just want you to imagine just looking around in that safe, calm place and just noticing a couple things that catch your eye. Keep breathing deep. And I want you to tune your attention to your hearing. And just notice in that place a couple things that you can hear. And as you take a big inhale, I just want you to notice if there's anything you can smell in that place. And then I want you to tune your attention to your body and just notice if there's anything you can tangibly feel with your body, your feet, your legs, your arms, just any part of your body. Just notice what it feels like to be present in that place. And I just want you to imagine for a minute that in that beautiful place that Jesus could walk in and he could come down and he'd sit right next to you. You could enjoy the beauty together. And just want you to imagine sitting there just like an old friend with Jesus. As you're sitting with him, just want you to notice his presence. Want you to notice if there's anything he's wanting to say to you or show you or give to you. Just keep breathing in. So whenever you feel ready, then you can come back to the present. Take another big inhale and exhale. And you can open your eyes whenever you feel ready. Okay.
Very nice. Thank you. It was so good, and we've done that practice 1,000 million times and some other practices like it, and
Yeah.
it's usually then that I can think through more coherently whatever
Mhm.
has me worked up at the time, and it's in those moments. So I'm under a tree. I call it the she
Mhm.
tree in Aspen, Colorado,
Yeah.
my favorite place on earth. That's where I started going, to get
Mhm.
still and be with Jesus, and remember at the beginning, I was, like, so afraid I had to be somewhere else,
Yeah.
and so a trick I learned was, if you've ever read any of the Chronicles of
Mhm.
Narnia, where time
Mhm.
stops when they go through the wardrobe or when they're in Narnia, I would
Yeah.
imagine that when I crossed the place to get to my tree with Jesus, that time would stop everywhere else so that I wasn't needed somewhere else. So I love that you reminded us of that. But it's been when I'm sitting under that tree in my mind and Jesus is sitting next to me that I've been able to hear his heart for me and his will for my life. And that is what made me capable of making some of the
Mhm.
hardest decisions I've ever had to
Mhm.
make, and to do it as peacefully as someone like me could do. Not that it's been pretty, but God's been present in all of it. And so
Mhm.
I'm so grateful for this exercise. And I have
Yeah.
to apologize. When I recorded the course, I attempted to lead them through something like this.
Mhm.
And bless my heart, just did the best I can, but I am just not Crystal Logan. And so I'm hoping that anybody who takes that course will also come listen to this episode and benefit from the full scope of what that exercise can do and just your calming demeanor. Because as you were doing it, I'm like, oh, dang, I hope I didn't just hack that so completely. That was wonderful, Crystal. And like I said, I really benefited from you helping me just get still
Yeah.
and connect with what I'm feeling and why I'm feeling it and what that need is and why that need exists and how to meet that need and who is always going to be there to help
Mhm.
me meet that need. And, it's always Jesus. And for anybody who is dealing with grief or trauma or betrayal or abandonment, the beautiful thing about getting to sit still with Jesus is that even if you feel like everyone else has abandoned you, and maybe you're like me, you've abandoned yourself a million times, this is a really great practice to remind you that you are not alone and that you are loved so deeply by Jesus. And he does have comfort for you and a will for your life.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's such a beautiful way to connect with the Lord.
Yeah.
Yourself. Yeah. I love being able to experience that.
And he's ultimately the one who is going to help you heal and help you get through whatever it is you're facing. So, like I've said from the very beginning, and I've highlighted, I think, in every episode that I've recorded thus far, the purpose of these spiritual practices and these soul care practices that we're talking through, including this one, this actual practice, isn't some way of like tricking our bodies or our spirits into anything. The whole purpose of all of these is to help us connect with the presence of God. And that's where we're going to find wholeness. That's where we're going to find healing. So thank you for teaching me so much about that and helping me do that. And thank you so much for coming on today and sharing this with my community.
Of course. It's been an honor to be here.
Thank you so much for spending time with us today. I hope that you found that exercise as calming and peace-giving and helpful as I did. Crystal has been invaluable to me in my healing journey, and I'm so glad I got to share her with you today. Now, if you want to know more about Crystal, just head on over to the show notes at theholyshift.org. And while you're over on the website, there are a couple of things I would invite you to do. The first one is just join our community, which basically just means sign up for the newsletter. That really is the best place for you to offer feedback, ask questions, and hear about community events and opportunities. You can also check out the free Draw Near, Dwell Well workbook that I put together for you, as well as the resource list that I mentioned earlier. And would you do me a favor? Forward this to a friend. Maybe there's somebody that you're thinking of right now that could really benefit from having an opportunity to slow down, sit still, and connect more deeply with herself and with God. And then if you're liking the show, do me a favor and subscribe or leave a review. That helps other people find us. And of course, we love that. And if you can stick around for a few more minutes, I will be sharing that very raw and personal reflection I talked about at the beginning of the show. It's my hope that this episode, this season, and this podcast will continue to help us all shift our perspective on Jesus and learn to draw near and dwell well. Thanks again for joining me as I explore the upside-down kingdom of God as the right way forward in faith and life. Remember that? Remember when your therapist guided you under that towering blue spruce in your imagination and meditation? And you sat atop the fallen needles and rested your back against the scabby trunk and plunged your fingers deep into the cool black soil and inhaled that peaty musk and closed your eyes and felt Jesus settle in next to you. And when the tears fell and the snot gushed, he wrapped his arms around you and pulled you close and pressed his lips to the top of your head. And when you said over and over, I'm sorry, he said, you never have to be sorry for being sad. And remember when the 6-year-old version of you, the one with the little turtle on her shirt and plastic sunglasses perched on her head between stringy pigtails because she wanted to look cool for picture day, came to join you under the tree? And she said she was scared and lonely and hurt. So you scooped her up and rocked her and swept her sticky bangs back from her forehead and looked her in the eye and told her life would be hard and people would betray and desert and exploit and neglect and discard. And even you would abandon her for a while, but God never would. And when you came to understand that she was worthy of safety and dignity and kindness, you would return to her because you believed her and loved her and celebrated her because she was not invisible and she was not nothing. And remember when the current version of you, the one with the haggard eyes and weary soul and shattered spirit, realized you had sacrificed your sacred core to please the unpleasable and had remained scared and lonely and hurt. And when you looked over at Jesus, he smiled with such tenderness. And he scooped you up and rocked you and tucked your frizzy hair back behind your ear and looked you in the eye and told you life has been hard and people have betrayed and deserted and exploited and neglected and discarded, but he never abandoned you. And when you came to understand that you are worthy of safety and dignity and kindness, he would restore you back to yourself because he believes you and loves you and celebrates you. Because you are not invisible and you are not nothing. And remember when he took both little you and weary you and set your yearning faces toward the sky and pointed to the gold leaves and the purple flowers and the red birds and the fat clouds and said, every time you feel betrayed or deserted or invisible, just search for these reminders of my presence and mercy and love. I have placed them everywhere, tiny promises scattered like confetti over lonely valleys. And when you notice them, remember this. Remember you. Remember me. Remember that. Remember that.